you're going to have tech people right now in Balenciaga and Gucci because you have metaverse engineers, VR engineers. All these people are going to clash because it's going to be so hilarious to see people coming from finance, art, tech, gaming, and they all will work together.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of NEWFORUM. NEWFORUM brings together leaders, creators, new starters, and new perspectives on crypto, the metaverse, NFTs, Social 3, and DAOs. And guys, don't forget to like and subscribe right now to always stay tuned for the next episode of NEWFORUM.
And on today's episode, we have a very special guest, Mimi Nguyen. She is the R&D lead at ManaSearch, co-founder of Nguyen Wahed, lecturer at Imperial College London, and innovation lecturer at Central St. Martin's. On today's episode, we will be discussing the concept of the future of work, Web3, NFTs, and of course, the metaverse. Hey, Mimi, we're super honored to have you on today's episode.
Hello, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So Mimi, could you tell us about who you are and how you got into the Web3 world? I'm always curious to hear everyone's story.
Okay, great. So I am officially right now a lecturer. So I teach at 3 different universities, Imperial, Central St. Martin's, and UCL. But apart from that, I am kind of coming from the financial services background. So I've worked before in consulting, BCG, Accenture, working specifically with clients in financial services. And it kind of led me to fintech. So that's where I ended up in ManaSearch, which is a fintech headhunting company. And then we realized that the fintech space actually is quite becoming now dominated by blockchain companies. And we work with a lot of Web3 companies. And that's kind of grew out my interest into how the future of work will look like once the technology will switch from financial services to fintech and then to blockchain. And of course, through my work at Central St. Martin's, we are observing what's happening not only in art but also in fashion, especially. And then there's this massive growth of NFTs. So we're merging now the two worlds of creativity, arts, fashion with fintech, basically. So it's actually 3 words: finance, technology, and arts. And that's quite exciting. That's something that I always was dreaming of. I was studying before in the economic school and in the art school, and I was always struggling to find a job. Like, how can I merge these 2 things together? And kind of in 2018, I realized okay, this is kind of my life now, and I'm very excited to see what will happen in the space.
That's incredible. So I'm just curious to know, what are some of the questions that your students ask you? As a lecturer, I'm sure there's another different perspective as to how the questions that people within the people who are already sort of settled in this Web3 space have their own kind of questions. And then I'm guessing these students who are getting they're in the student mind frame, right? And trying to figure a lot of things out. So I'm wondering how you help them process everything that is going on with this digital age, this new digital era, I'd say. So
you would think that they are curious about the space, but I do sense there is some resistance, especially, it's quite shocking from my point of view. So, I mean, I do have some students at CSM who are very into NFTs and blockchain, but I would say that's still kind of maybe 5% still, and we're still struggling to really introduce this space to art students. And I saw that both at CSM and RCA, College of Art, when I went to the fine art department, and I was asked who here as a painter is minting NFTs, and my friend said there's no one. And I think there is this resistance. It's kind of course, as you asked, what are the questions? And of course, the first question is, what the fuck is NFT? That's kind of, everyone's what is it even? Why there are memes there? And why I think it's quite tricky for someone who studies in the leading art institution is because you are being trained to showcase good art. Whereas if you go on the Twitter space, you just see memes, monkeys and all of these things, and it's quite hard for us to really understand that this is becoming kind of like a new wave of art. For my generation, it's slightly more understandable because it brings this notion of a bit futuristic nostalgia. A lot of NFTs are bringing back the 90s. So Tamagotchi, like CryptoKitties, the pixelated thing, reminded you of Windows XP. I think that for lecturers, it's easier to understand that. And because we feel a disconnection. For Gen Z, it could be more tricky, but I think they're curious about the space. And of course, you can see how much artists are earning. So there is a slight movement. There is not much information in terms of academic information. So I'm trying now to launch an academy in both universities, Imperial College London and Central St. Martin's, to really raise awareness and educate students, like what is smart contract, what is blockchain, how do you set up wallets, how do you mint stuff, about sustainability of that. Is that really the issue that we're fighting? Like, is it that bad as everyone is talking about? Like minting one Bitcoin is more than energy consumption of Switzerland. So that's kind of more an issue of awareness, I believe. And we're trying to do that. As an example, I can give you, for example, I have direct contact with 60 students at UCL on a weekly basis, and we're running like case studies about strategy. And there's one person who is doing a case study about Coinbase. There's one person. And it's shocking because for me, it will be the future. Like you see all of these companies, Revolut is having, for example, crypto in their app as well. So I think it's going to be there, but not yet. And as someone from academic institution, it's our job also to inform our students, to bring this space closer to them and to really show them that it's not a scary space.
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked when I heard the word resistance, because you would think that these students will be pursuing, I would say, more knowledge about the space, because it looks like it's here to stay, and we're just like literally scratching the tip of the iceberg at the moment, and there's so much potential. And I definitely get this idea of like, looking at the current NFTs out there, that could be quite discouraging, because you're taught the academic way and how art should look, and the aesthetic, and in terms of like the elements of design and all these things and composition and whatnot. But this is why we want more of them to be part of the space, part of the market, to create that diversity, that value that they hope to see. So we hopefully, thankfully you're doing that work, and we really appreciate that. So thank you.
Yeah, really, like in terms of this academies that I'm trying to set up now with my colleagues, it is exciting from our point of view because we want to bring together people from different industries, as I said, like coders from, I don't know, Algorand Foundation, together with gallerists, Sotheby's people who are exhibiting NFTs or selling NFTs, and really trying to present to students that this is something that's already happening out there, and we need more people with some training, artistic background, coming from artistic background, who can enter the space and as you say, like dominate Twitter in a better aesthetically, let's say, way. But my only concern is that going to be popular enough? Because if there is resistance, how can I motivate people and students to come to the space? And then I also think that that if you look at the sales of Christie's that happened with Beeple, I found recently like amazing stats, and that's something that we can see the shift of collectors, of people who are buying art. So majority, if you look at the auction houses, it used to be around like 60% would be people above 40. And that's about contemporary art. So majority is literally like 40, 65 plus. With modern art, you have even more the elder group, so it would be like 50-50. And what happened with the Beeple sales at Christie's is that we literally got 68% of millennials, so people from 1981 to 1996 who were bidding on Beeple. And I think this is a shocking shift of like who is buying art right now. Gen Z was actually still 6% around. So I think once they reach, of course, the financial freedom to buy art for 69 million, it also will change the mindset, and there will be a paradigm shift. But I am very excited to see that shift from over 40s to millennials starting to collecting art. And as I said, it's just because it's closer to us nostalgically. And then I think hopefully in a few years we'll see Gen Z entering the collector's market.
That is quite impressive. If you think about usually that the art market has like quite high barriers to entry to even buying a really expensive painting. And now that this is shifting and you can literally get into your favorite projects through NFTs and own a piece and be part of a community, I think that's really amazing. And it teaches young creators and artists like the concept of ownership and really the long term, what they can do with these NFTs and what they can really build for themselves as well. And I want to go a bit deeper on that and ask you, like, what do you think is the overall long-term potential for NFTs, and maybe where do you see the market right now and looking forward to in the future, like relating art and maybe also innovation?
So that's one thing that I thought recently. It's quite controversial what I was thinking about. So I can share that. It's not, and it's not like a thought through thing that I thought like, what's the future of NFTs? I do believe NFTs is a great mechanism. I don't think it's art personally. I think it's just a tool. It's a mechanism, it's a medium, how we can track the ownership of digital assets. And it brings all the notions of the provenance, and it's great. And why I think it's great, and it's so, and people don't really understand that, is I believe that we're already living in a digital space. So the fact that we are speaking right now on Zoom, this is already happening, and we are spending, I don't know, half of our time because of the hybrid working on Zoom calls. We are spending a lot of our time on Instagram. So like a lot of things that is happening is that we are buying clothes. And I do want to say that, and then people would, would of course disagree with me, is that I do believe that a large part of the reason why young generations are buying clothes are for Instagram. The issue is that if once you post the picture with that, then you don't really want to wear it again. And my belief is that this whole technology will enable us in the future to consume less, in terms of like, if we start to dress up with digital clothing and through using the mechanism of purchasing that for NFTs, we might basically just reduce the waste. And that's kind of my new idea, and thinking like, how can we bring sustainability through fashion into what we consume. So there are like two ways that we discuss about sustainability, and this is why I think that the future of NFT is quite exciting. That can bring us is, traditionally we talk about new fabrics, so CSM is quite big on that. So we are thinking about like what different sources for fabrics we can have. I don't know, plastic bottles, potatoes. That's one of my students from Imperial, they're researching. And it's fantastic in terms of, yes, it's a sustainable solution. However, it still is driving consumption. So if you look at the companies like Pangaea, Patagonia, they are still reporting to their shareholders the sales volume. It's still about like how many people bought Pangaea. So I ended up with like 10 items of Pangaea, and it's bad. It's actually, it's still bad because it's just like me hoarding a lot of clothes. And there are solutions, regenerative futures, which we are trying to recycle. Think about circular economy. So we're taking our old clothes and turning them into new clothes. It's still quite bad for the planet because of the logistics. So we need to transport that. We need to clean the dye from the clothes, and we need to turn that into new clothes. It's actually a lot of waste that is happening in the production phase of, and logistically to deliver the new item. So I was just thinking recently when I saw this fantastic, I think it was in 2019 collection of Dapper Labs, when they put a supermodel on a rooftop and then dress her up in a digital clothing. And that look on Instagram, it looks like a real thing to me. And I think that if I can, instead of buying 7 jumpers, just buy 2, and then 4 other jumpers, just wear it on a Zoom with you right now, it would just make me buy less physical things, and NFT would enable that, because it's basically a solution for us to purchase a digital asset.
That's really interesting hearing your perspective on that, because you are a lecturer and I guess you have a lot of students around the schools that also, you know, learn fashion in a traditional way or art in a traditional way, and then now having to deal with all this technology and these issues that we face. For me personally, I think, Salimi, we talk about that a lot. We love the concept of like phygital, you know, and I think also in the art market that would be maybe a thing that, you know, you can have a physical piece, but then also like an NFT, or somebody who might just want the NFT, or you have like a special collection where you have like a couple of pieces, but not like this huge consumption, you know. So you really have to think about, okay, am I going to invest in this? Am I going to buy this? Am I going to hold this? Or do I just get the NFT for the filter or whatever option you want to have that NFT for? So
yeah, but the same goes with arts as well. So I think collectors would too. I know back then you would buy a canvas and then you would, I don't know, hang it on your wall. I mean, usually that people put that in vaults, but sometimes you would hang on the wall and then invite friends over and then, you know, kind of brag around like, okay, I bought this piece of art, which is fine. But I think that our bragging right now is happening on Instagram again, because the exposure is bigger, the audience is bigger. And if you buy an NFT, this is basically you having your own gallery and you're showcasing your taste as a collector. So every single person can be a collector right now. And that's something that is exciting in terms of course, you're having, as an artist, a bigger exposure, and then you can reach collectors easier. And then of course you can sell faster. My only concern with that is that we are moving, and you might have seen that in my previous comments, into the mass taste. And I'm not against it. I'm just saying that, you know, my metaphor would be, because that was what my professor in the art school used to tell me. If I would paint something very bad, he would be like, this is a great IKEA curtain, which means that this is great, you can sell it to people, but I disapprove of that. And this kind of like hit me quite badly, because I'm like, okay, do I want to design an IKEA curtain that, you know, millions of people would have in their houses and it's a mass taste, or do I want to paint something that, you know, my professor would approve and would go to a gallery? So that's kind of a concern about like who is deciding now about what's the value and you know, how good is the art piece.
Great points. So like circling back to when you were talking about like, you know, you're talking about owning like digital pieces as well as like physical, like balancing between the physical and the digital will be like sort of a great solution to this consumer sort of mindset that we have in general. And I'm always curious as to why we as should I say humanity or human beings or whatnot, why do we feel, especially women, why do we feel like we need to have more clothes? So for you, like with your background and everything, I'm curious to know, why do you have this need to have a variety of clothes, or like a number of clothes?
I don't know why women have that. I think guys have that as well, to be honest.
Right? Yeah, in general, yeah, I guess some guys do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do think that this, you know, this digital life, our second alter ego that we have online somewhere, that kind of also contributes to that, because we're presenting a different person online, and of course you want to always, you know, showcase something else. I think the best example of that would be if you go back to this series on Netflix, Inventing Anna. It shows like how much people care about your image formation, and that actually comes out from my research, which is completely not related to NFTs. I was researching like multidisciplinary collaboration in the remote space with IBM research, and just trying to like understand if we help our Slack conversations in terms of understanding our messages, sentiment, tone, emotions, can we improve creativity and collaboration in remote working? And what came out from the study, which is completely just about future of work and remote working, was, by speaking of our participants, is that they care about image formation. And they're like, we would use this AI tool on Slack when we speak to a professor, when we speak to a colleague that, you know, if we're a newcomer in a company, if we speak to someone in a higher position in a hierarchy, because they care so much how they come across. And I think, yeah, somehow it's kind of like this crowd movement that we like to treat ourselves with new clothes. I don't know why.
Yeah, I think it's one of those questions that is really hard to answer. But I think that the last time Joy and I, we were having this discussion about should we repeat what we wear for the podcast, and maybe we should. Yeah, we should, because we care about sustainability, so we must represent it. And then the last time we had another conversation where Joy had like a new pair of a new shirt or something that she wore, and then we spoke about it, and the fact that sometimes you wear something different and it just makes you feel good. And I experienced that as well. So I think that's part of it. And of course, this attention economy is contributing to it. Like you said, the like Instagram and how we project ourselves. And, that leads me to think about the metaverse, and how all of this plays in this metaverse space that we don't exactly know how it's going to look, but I can imagine people like self-expression and identity is like such a big thing. And I think, being able to do that digitally, again, it kind of like, or like balancing it with physical, digital, I think is a good way in terms of like solving the sustainability issue that we have. So also we read an article you wrote where you mentioned that, like, I will quote you, you said, "I'd like to address the sustainability problem of proof of work." So could you explain what you meant by this to our audience?
So yeah, so there's a lot of criticism about blockchain, of course, right? That it's a not sustainable solution because of the minting process of every block that is happening on the chain. So if we go back to the traditional or the most known chains like Bitcoin and Ethereum, which is massively used for in the NFT space, the mechanism, the technology behind that is, of course, like, all of these computers that are minting, they're solving these mathematical equations or problems. And to verify that, that's why it's called proof of work, because you need to always verify the previous ones. So every time you're running a process, or how would I say, you're processing a calculation on previous elements as well. And that's why it just becomes bigger and bigger, and the energy consumption side is basically the servers that are running that. So, our laptops, our computers, the more RAM it has, the faster it runs. But like this problems, mathematical problems or and equations, they take so much power that to run that, it just takes one Bitcoin. I'm not sure, but it's calculated that it's more than an energy consumption of a country. Bigger than Iceland or Switzerland. And unfortunately, that's the most kind of, let's say, popular chains right now. But we do see, as one of my guest panelists from that event, Arthur Brightman, he's an author of the white paper of Tezos protocol, which is using a different mechanism. And it's proof of stake, which is consuming way less, I think 1 in 10 million less power and hence energy, is because they are not recalculating the old problems, but they just kind of building on top. And for me, that's the future. You will see a lot of protocols that are built on that. There's a new one as well that is having proof of consensus, I think. And that's another kind of technology that is even trying to like minimize energy consumption even more. And so I think there's this whole controversy discussion about like how much blockchain is using. And I do agree it's bad, but we also have to take a step back and look at, if you talk about financial system, I saw a fantastic graph recently. They were trying to calculate how much power is being used by financial system. Everything is run on servers. So all our accounts, the whole Canary Wharf in London, look at all the skyscrapers, and they are heavily run on tech, which is run somewhere in the cloud, which is run on some servers somewhere, in states or some farms. And they are consuming energy as well. So I'm not going to say some shallow jokes like, yes, if you ship a canvas for free straight art, it's also bad because of the plane. It is bad, but maybe not as much as Bitcoin. But I think if you look at the financial services and the servers that are running, or our bank accounts or our transactions, that's also expensive. So we need to find a balance and really not, trying to attack this one industry, because I think there is a strong movement. The whole Web3 space is trying really hard to, even Ethereum for the last 2 years are trying to launch proof of stake. I think eventually they will do one day, but there is a movement. There are other chains. There's Tezos, there's Algorand, there is proof of stake. We don't really have to stick to Ethereum, and I think there's a lot of money flowing into R&D here that is trying to improve the blockchain, basically energy consumption, and hopefully, yeah, we'll see it very soon.
Right. I think that's super important what you just mentioned, because we want to move away from these Web2 structures, and like the concept of Web3 is that we move towards decentralization and more, let's say, a more equal internet and a more spread out internet where multiple people have the power to move things within the internet, and within the companies as well. And the concept of multi-chain, and I think is really important, because you have so many different projects that have so many different needs across the industries, and I think it just makes sense that there's multiple chains and multiple ways to approach this, and that we better this technology. I always sometimes fear that, it's not a fear of mine, but I always think like there's so much innovation and so much going on every day, that when do we stop innovating, or like when is the stop? Like we kind of just, like, humans just tend to always go ahead and go ahead and go ahead and more and more and more, and it's like, when do we kind of, I'm afraid that we don't look at all of the consequences that we are producing, but that's something we have to figure out. And like you said, they are moving towards more sustainable ways, and they're moving to better mechanisms, like you said, proof of stake. And for example, we at NewCoin, we focus on proof of creativity, and we're really passionate about creative economy and creators, and yeah, I have the best hope, but I'm just saying that there's also, that's like my concern, what was my concern. So from the blockchain space, what do you expect in the future? I mean, this question can go very broad, but me and Salimi, for example, we talked about, like, there's so many ways you can maybe use blockchain, like, for example, medical things, or even documentation of, I don't know, we talked about immigration or something like that. You could document on the blockchain different things, and I think the potential is very big. So maybe what do you expect from the future of this blockchain space?
I personally believe that blockchain will revolutionize financial services. That's something that can just basically bring down a lot of costs that we're having to cover right now as end users, to run over this, as I said, the banks and the system transactions that we're doing on an everyday basis. There's a lot of money flowing in just to maintain the system. So I think blockchain, in a way, as a technology that is just more efficient, by optimizing a lot of things through smart contracts and reducing the labor cost, can bring the cost for the end user down, and the speed, of course. So, like, if we talk about cross-border transactions, all of these things. There is a concern also, of course. I'm not saying that everything is great, because you mentioned also Web2 and Web3. I do think that there is something still that we're not understanding quite well, in terms of, we're already talking about Web3, but what I noticed is that it's still governed by the same people. So OpenSea is invested, Coinbase was invested by Andreessen Horowitz. So it's still the same VCs behind all of these other traditional solutions that we're using. And what happened yesterday, 2 days ago with OpenSea, the fact that people signed blank checks to the phishing attacks, and 1.7 million of NFTs has been lost because they just transferred to the attackers. This also shows whether we do need middlemen or not, because if we have a bank, let's say Amex, and someone steal my card, I can call up Amex, say it wasn't my transaction. They will retrieve the transaction, they will bring the money back. Whereas OpenSea, because of the whole system of decentralization, the people sign that, and it's gone. And this also brings the risk, like the moment when we don't have anyone in the middle layer that can take things back, that's a risk as well. So, you're just more exposed to scammers if you don't have an institution that can protect you. And, I'm not saying that our traditional systems are great. So Web3 opens up a lot of potential here, but we can't just go blindly and say this is amazing, because there are a lot of issues that this brings. Just, as I said, exactly the OpenSea thing that happened 2 weeks ago. Another thing is, when what happens if all these exchanges and wallets are shut down? What happens to our stuff? Is it really safe on that chain somewhere? Like, how do you make sure that Coinbase tomorrow won't just shut down everything and say like, okay, well, we just closed? I think that the example was with Hic-et-Nunc, which was resolved. So they shut down the website, which happened to be just a front end, and then all the NFTs were saved in the chain, and they could recreate on object.com. And that kind of showed like how resistant and resilient the system is. So yes, I think the future will be for sure in terms of bringing down the cost for end users, shifting the power of who is deciding what's valuable in terms of this creator collectors economy. I do believe that collectors now having a lot to say, especially because on the chain you can track who owned the piece in the history. So that will be just interesting to see like how the collectors market and the art market will evolve, right? Like the curators right now won't be possibly these auction houses anymore, but either Twitter spaces and Twitter accounts or the marketplaces, which brings back to who holds the power. Like, if Super Rare is deciding who they are exhibiting, that's the same thing that Sotheby was doing. So I don't see anything new happening right now, apart from the communities. And of course, for me personally, the biggest impact will be future of work, because we see a lot of new job titles coming out. So, I didn't see 10 years ago community manager, right? And that's something that just came out recently as quite pivotal and key role in an organization. Smart contracts developers, that wasn't there before. And, companies are now desperate to find anyone who has knowledge of smart contracts. So we need to retrain the new generation of coders basically to a different technology. And I came from very old technology. I came from SQL, which was for data science, and then we moved to Python, and then I can see now like slowly we are needing people in Solidity and other like blockchain related languages. So there will be a massive shift in terms of work. So there will be new job titles, new roles, new functions. The tech teams are going to grow. And then especially what would be so fascinating for me to see, and this is my basically PhD research, is the collaboration between different functions. So multidisciplinary collaboration or transdisciplinary collaboration in terms of, you're going to have tech people right now in Balenciaga and Gucci, because you have metaverse engineers, VR engineers. All these people are going to clash, because it's going to be so hilarious to see like, people coming from finance, art, tech, gaming, and they all will work together in a remote way. And that will show, I think blockchain opens up new opportunities, but new challenges as well. How can we deal with remote working on such a diverse spectrum of skill sets, knowledge, backgrounds, experiences? And yeah, I mean, I think it will be a Schumpeterian creative destruction effect that eventually we'll get out it with a winning hand, hopefully.
You nailed it really on the head with what you just said, about there's going to be disruption and also a bit of chaos. And Salini and me, we know this really well because we come more from the fashion background, and now we have a whole tech team. And sometimes the communication is, the marketing team and the community team, they want something, and then the tech team, they just care about their product, the app and everything. So it's interesting, but it opens up so many doors for people from all around the world, remote working. And also we have a lot of artists on who come from emerging markets, somewhere from Ghana, somewhere from anywhere in the world, and they can now enter the space and design their clothes or offer their services. And I think that's really amazing for me.
Yeah, I forgot about the cultural point as well, because I'm seeing that as well. So before COVID, we didn't really thought about collaborating, I think, on that scale in a global kind of notion. And then now it's just, you can literally set up offices around the world because we're so used to remote working. And I do see clashes. I do see, it's just sometimes the way you speak is slightly different. And it's not just about the nationality that you're coming from, but it's also like where you grew up and what is. So I'm Eastern European, kind of like I'm from Poland. So I do speak sometimes quite aggressively, apparently. And I just like have to be quite honest with people. Like, I'm sorry, I'm just not meaning that. It's just how I speak. But I think, yeah, it's leveling up. It's helping, a lot of people from, as you say, like other countries who would never dream of coming to UK, collaborating right now with UK companies. And there is such an amazing tacit knowledge that can be transferred from this multicultural and multidisciplinary collaboration. However, it will be challenging the remote working. And that's what I'm trying to finish my PhD on, like really trying to think like, how can we, again, work towards creativity in such teams, not focusing on performance. And that's something that really hurts me when we talk about like, how to improve remote working and future of work, because I don't want to look into performance and effectiveness, because that's about like how quickly can I finish the meeting. And that's completely different than how creative I want or how innovative I want the meeting to end up with. That kind of requires a lot of different approaches in a way how we collaborate, in terms of using more visual elements and being kind of more empathetic to other people from other cultures and disciplines, and be understanding. And I think Web3, it's kind of just open up this Pandora box. And but yeah, as I said, like from any chaos, that there will be even more exciting innovations that are coming out.
Yeah, I think I mean, it's really exciting. Like Joyce said, within our team, they're like a team of different backgrounds, and I've learned so much. Like I came with a fashion background, and I had advertising background, and I obviously use technology, but not to this extent, so I consider myself, this is actually an opportunity for me to learn. I'm still learning about this space because it keeps changing, and there's just so much happening each day. You can't even keep up with it. Like, it's almost overwhelming to try to keep up with the vocabulary, the language, and all the changes, but it's just exciting to see that it is disrupting some of the things that I would say creators are facing with the current, I'd say, Web2 platforms, in terms of ownership, being able to actually create value and gain what you deserve for it, through NFTs and all of that. And I feel like blockchain sort of enables this, like the largest, I'd say, distribution of wealth we've seen in history.
I don't agree. I found I found a paper.
Okay, I want to hear your thoughts on that.
I found recently a paper someone posted on Twitter. It's actually a scientific paper, peer-reviewed and stuff, and it's shocking to see what happens. So we do think that you do see outliers, like people saying that they saw an NFT and they paid their student loan or bought a house or something like that. It's outliers, because what the paper was analyzing for different marketplaces, including OpenSea, Foundation, I think mainly it was Foundation and Super Rare, is that artists that are invited, there are different clusters. It's basically a class system when you have different clusters of artists and collectors, and the artists that are invited by wealthy artists and wealthy collectors are being bought by the same collectors. So 85% of transactions, I think it was transactions, has been around 10% of collectors. So it's just the whales that are just buying all of this stuff, 10%, and then they buy 85 of the volume that is in the marketplace. And it depends on who invited you into Foundation. So if you belong to the cluster of that wealthy artists/collectors, you possibly will be sold over $1,500 that was. And the number was shocking in terms of like also how many percent of the art was actually sold over 1,500. I think it was literally 2%. and the rest is like, you know, $10 to $100. So it is creating slightly now, you know, little groups of who is supporting whom. And I do still think that it's quite difficult as an artist to really get out there. You can, of course, you know, build your community on Twitter, but again, this community are quite close in terms of, you know, you have this nice community of, I don't know, curators, collectors around particular, usually chain. So you have very strong Solana community that would just like buy each other stuff. There's a way who, you know, in one night he can just buy 1,000 NFTs. And if you ask him like, how did you choose them? He's like, I don't care. I just bought 1,000, because he just strongly supports the Solana community and then Solana artists. And then you have a very strong Tezos art communities, and then you have very like strong Whales, Ethereum, that, you know, it's just in millions, the transactions are going there. And that's basically this what happens on this foundation. So the paper, I know I can send you the link later, but it's just fascinating to see.
Please
because
do. I'd love to read it and process it. Joy and I can spend some time reading it.
Yeah, we think that, you know, it's so easy. I'll just like mint something and then, you know, there'll be someone who buys it. He will buy it for $15. But in order for me to sell it for 200, I don't know, I need to like literally, you know, enter a community, know some people who can refer me and really build that up, which again, I mean, it's a work. I don't think that traditional artists didn't have the same work to do. You'd have to show up in private views, make connections, network around. So yeah, it's just kind of like still similar in my opinion to what's happening in the traditional world, just on a you know, on a Twitter space.
I think I'd like to say, you know, the idea of the potential Web3 has, it's the most exciting. And I think that there's a lot of things that needs to be defined, and, you know, we need to process through a lot of things. And for instance, like with the NFT market, like initially when we were talking about your students and how some of them are resisting, you know, this concept because they see the art there and they're like, no, I mean, what is this, you know? But like, I think that we have the responsibility to build this Web3 space that we all want to see. You know, we want to be a part of this vision, you know, the completion of this vision, because right now to some extent, we're speculating a lot of things, you know, and people are taking, I don't want to say it, but I guess to some extent taking advantage of monetizing, you know, and the how do you say it, the intention is just, I want to gain some money, I can mint this and make some money. And so we need to definitely think about the moral and ethical side of things as the space grows, to get to the point where we kind of all envision it to be, you know, because it's here to stay. It's only going to evolve, but it's here, and it's not going anywhere. So we really hope for the best, because human and machines like communicating and figuring all this out, it can be a bit scary, but thankfully we have a platform like NEWFORUM. We have you know, to spark these kind of conversations, to get people thinking, because education is very important. You want to know what you're getting yourself into as well. So I'm also, so back to your work at UAL, it being like the hub for innovation, and also, you know, it's known for fashion, for its fashion department. What do you expect from the future of fashion in terms of like digital fashion and this new digital age and era?
I don't know if I should say that. So next week we're actually hosting a panel, Metaverse in Fashion. So that's where we will kind of disclose more information, but I'm very excited. We will have Kathleen, so she's a co-founder of Tezos. I mean, you can see I'm the founder of Tezos. And we'll have Lucy Maguire from Vogue in Business, kind of bringing like the view. She's doing a fantastic job right now. She's researching who is dressing up the crypto billionaires recently, and I'm so excited to kind of hear her stories. We will have Andrew Kigwell, I don't know how to pronounce that. He's a chairman of Metaverse Group, and these are the guys who are hosting the first Metaverse Fashion Week in the Central Land. And you know, they invested 2.5 million into Metaverse fashion catwalk. So I really want to hear like from him what's his vision, like, his comments on this the Central Fashion Week, and so that will be exciting. And I'm speaking to Burberry as well about like the NFTs jobs. So that's kind of like bringing different views from people who are already doing that. And that's again something that you say, raising awareness to our students, like, if you want to get any job after graduating this university, look, these are the organizations that are already doing that, and this is where you can get a job if you are an expert in the space. But in terms of fashion, as I mentioned, I do believe that it could, in a funny way, solve a bit the sustainability issues and the consumptions problem that we have. But then on the other hand, yes, I do like to have and feel, nice fabrics on myself. So yeah, I mean, in terms of fashion, it could affect, as I said, sustainability in terms of like, if you present something, you don't really maybe have to produce that nowadays. Maybe you can just have it in a metaverse. Maybe you can have it in a VR, so that people can see that, and then they can order it. So it's kind of like going back to more wasteless way of production. So I'm going back to like Kanban and agile events. So like, if you can test that out on an MVP thing, which would be a digital version of a piece of clothing, and then once there is a demand, people sign up to that, you produce it on a mass scale. That also kind of helps with not only sustainability, but efficiency of the production process. And yeah, and in terms of NFT, I think it will affect, I don't know, I want to see how we all will on Instagram one day will be dressed up in digital clothes, and an NFT will be a great thing to actually make these clothes cheaper as well.
Yeah, super interesting, because I feel like over the past 5 months, I've seen so many brands, venturing into the metaverse and venturing into NFTs and Web3, and it was quite interesting to see, okay, what are they doing? What is their strategy, kind of like, who are they, which designers are they collaborating with? And you see more of like younger talents also collaborating with these brands because they joined their Discord or they are part of their community already. So you see that there's, I think, a lot of visual potential, and on the art perspective, with VR and everything, just from a visual standpoint, I feel like there's so much that we can explore. I'm very excited also about the concept of like, where to earn, something where, influencers might be wearing like an NFT, and there's so many commerce like ways that you can think about this metaverse. And I'm wondering, what is your like take on the metaverse in general?
I do think that it started in slightly different objective in terms of, I do believe that all these companies came up with this metaverse and NFT jobs last year because there was COVID. So they had to close their shops. And like, someone was thinking in the marketing department, like, how can we speak to people that they can't come to the shop? And how can we reach younger generation? Because this is the new power, purchasing power, right? For all the millennials. And there are just very intriguing talks across different companies that are trying to like, okay, we are I think the most interesting case is to see how luxury brands dealt with this. So you have I don't really see that many small brands that just enter the metaverse and the VR. So of course it's the issue of how much money you have so that you can quickly drop an NFT or create a metaverse department like Balenciaga. So it started with, I think, first figuring out a new communication channel with a younger audience, and B, without having a physical presence. And yeah, I mean, the opportunity just came in. There's metaverse, and there's all this digital kind of exhibition space that the companies kind of could make use of. And so they tested on a small scale last year, like little drops there and there, and it just blew out, because what they realized is that this is what this audience was looking for, or have time to be engaged with, and have money, because they also got a lot of money from investment, which they cannot pay out. And I'm linking this to this whole issue of tax avoidance, right? Like, you can't really pay out if you earn on Dogecoin a lot of money. So what do? You can turn it into Ethereum and buy some NFTs. And I think that just kind of blew out the whole space, and they just, people got used to it because it just created new habit, and the companies will stick to that as one of the new communication channels. And I think, yeah, I mean, from the fashion point of view, is that really exciting? You know, from the point of craftsmanship, the craftsmanship has been changed now. So, you know, someone from Central St. Martin's, which is like mainly an haute couture institution, right? Where, you know, the students would sew for hours and hours little pieces on the beautiful dresses when you see at the degree shows. But then now you can just code that online. So is that something that we are supportive of? I'm not really sure. And also it looks slightly different in the metaverse. But yeah, but I think it will stay. It will be a very, it's a fantastic communication channel, as you say, Discord's metaverse. This is where we will be functioning partially, and potentially in the future, like you will have your second life there. And yeah, I don't know, it's quite, maybe actually it's better for us. So maybe we'll keep buying a lot of nice haute couture physical stuff so that we can value the craftsmanship and appreciate that, and then we'll buy the mass things digitally online in the metaverse. That'd be the dream.
Yeah, that's a really great point. You know, when you spoke of like craftsmanship, I was like, oh, craftsmanship. You know, like I went to a SCAD, and my fashion professor graduated from UAL, and he was like quite crazy, and he got me to do all these, to experiment and create like this amazing collection, you know, and like experimenting with all kinds of things and touching and building. Like we got to a point where we experimented so much that when I had to actually construct the garment and have it ready for the runway, I was struggling, and we were both like, okay, how do we get this? You know, the prototype was great, but then having to like get all the finishing done the way it should be done, the way it should be accepted, we kind of got a bit stuck. But it was such an amazing experience, right? And I think that personally, I have to find that balance between digital. Like that's the reason why the concept of phygital just does it for me, because craftsmanship is craftsmanship, and I feel like nothing can replace that. Being able to touch the fabric, also being able to wear and feel what you wear. But definitely, like you said, it is solving the sustainability concept, and having your avatars in the, or identity, or being able to express yourself in this metaverse world, however it's going to look. I don't really fancy how it looks right now so far, how people look in it, but I think it's definitely going to evolve. And I think it's going to be a space where, like you said, maybe we can get the digital fashion of the things that we would buy cheaper, right, today, and invest in the couture, you know, stuff.
In the cashmere jumpers.
I know, right? I really like the sound of that. And you know, we had this guest come on, and he said, Francesco Vicenti, and he said metaverse is sort of like a hype, and it's a hype if you use the word metaverse. He says, just call it a natural evolution of technology. Look around you and see where communication is going, where the social media is going, where hardware is going, where blockchain tech is going. And pretty much for him, that's kind of how he processes metaverse. But you know, the word metaverse has sort of been used just like all over the place, that it's losing its kind of like value.
It's been coined in 1992 actually, so it has like 30 years. It's not like a new concept. It's just, you know, as you say, the new hype that is happening right now. But I do agree with him. That's kind of my point. We're already speaking on Zoom. We're already having our lives on Instagram.
Exactly.
We're already saving files in the cloud. We don't even have this I actually have it because I'm old school, but we don't have like this physical local hard drives with terabytes so that we can save our pictures on it. It's all in the cloud, it's all online, and it's all publicly available. So my point is, like, if people really asking like what the fuck is metaverse or what the fuck is NFT, it's like you are already having your alter ego on Instagram. Don't ask me about it because it's a separate life there. You're a different person. So you are presenting something else. And I think if there is just a space when, mirroring our, okay, now we go philosophy, so I don't want to go into that, but like if we're mirroring kind of our world into
Real life.
this digital one, I think that we're slowly doing that. And metaverse, yeah, it's just a word. Maybe there will be a different word. I was thinking about recently because, we're trying to build that that hub at this university. I really don't want to use the word metaverse. I don't really want to use the word NFT. It's like, what is the word for this space that can be within CSM? Web3, I don't know. What if it's going to be Web4 soon, and then I have to like rename the whole hub? So it's funny to see, like, you look back into the MIT Media Lab, right? Like the word is Media Lab. Media used to be sexy a bit like 15 years ago, 10 years ago when I was still studying. I was studying media art actually. So that's exactly what was the hype back then. And now, yeah, now people are studying something else. And it's the same with, like, from the educational point of view, the courses that used to be there, right? Like my course back then would be, the other one would be called Quantitative Methods and Information Systems. It's that old school. We call it information systems. And nowadays they would call it data science because it just sounds nicer. What would be the next name? Like, smart contracts. So like it's just funny to see the evolution of the discourse and what wording people are using for that.
Yeah.
I think that's why I imagine it being so difficult being a lecturer, because you are on the edge of innovation and technology, and then you have these students who want to learn, and then all of these changes that are happening in the workforce, and how do you teach these like young kids or young passionate students, how to not only find their way through the space. I think that's really admirable. I'm very fascinated by education, and like Salimi said, like I want to quickly touch on the thing that you said with the physical fashion and the metaverse fashion. You can see the difference, like you can feel there is some difference. And also with physical fashion, I read a book somewhere, it says that mechanical practices, they have this aura, there is an aura about a physical thing, and the aura of like a digital thing is kind of like different. You even the way the clothes look, they just look very almost like fairylandish at the moment, because you have all of this experimental fabrics and things you can do, but it's a difference, I feel like. And I'm excited to see where it's going. But yeah, metaverse as well. I don't really fancy the word. I hope we come up with a better word. But it's funny to see how the terms, like there's an evolution of the terms, and you always have to keep adapting and learning new languages. And yeah, but I guess that's the big challenge of our generation, to figure this out.
Yeah, the same of like from an academic institution, like how do we name our courses, right? So like, it's called innovation management. And what we notice is quite outdated nowadays as well to use the word innovation management. And then we thought about different like kind of alternatives there, of course. And then that's my kind of internal joke. It's like last year or 2 years ago, the sexiest word was future of work, right? Like everyone was using that. And then a year later, the sexiest word was regenerative futures. What's the next one? So like we can't really like change the main course name according to some fashionable things. It's really hard to predict, what will be the next one. So I do believe in the classics as well. Like, if I see someone from Imperial from physics, I'm like, okay, this is great. Like they know how to code anyway. They will be good coders because they are good problem solvers as well. So yeah, I think that's the challenge, not only actually in the art world, but with ourselves in terms of our career and our jobs. How do we prepare ourselves for the future career? Because what should we study? What skill set should we equip ourselves with? Like, is it even worth learning Python nowadays? Or you should just jump straight to Solidity, which is the Ethereum one. And yeah, what courses are the best ones that can prepare you to that? Like, is it really marketing management? Is it actually physics? Is it, applied mathematics? I don't know, but I'm just saying that it's quite tricky for the young generation right now to really choose, because they don't even know where they're going to work with. I was not aware that I will do whatever I'm doing right now when I was starting my BA, and talking about blockchain with you right now. in 2009. I mean, that would be such an absurd thing. So yes, I think, how can we learn things that will still be transferable in the next 10 years? Is that Web 2? Is that Web 3? Or is it going to Web 4? I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, as you were speaking, I was also thinking about, so when I was in grad school at School of Visual Arts in New York, my program was called Design for Social Innovation. And I'm like, I need to go check to see.
That was very sexy, yeah, social innovation.
Yeah, is it still called social innovation, or what is it now? And you are totally right. I kind of like wonder how, the current students, the younger generation, how they feel like, trying to navigate all these things. Because when I was at SCAD, all I knew was I just wanted to graduate, and I was thinking about my internship, and I was told you needed to have how do you call a LinkedIn account. You needed to have, I think, was it Instagram, was on Facebook, because the employers go there to look at the students or whatever. So I had to create all these things, but then now there's like so much more, there's Twitter, there's this, there's that. And I recently got a Twitter account because I wanted to be, to be well informed, and I wanted to learn about the space and all of that. So it's quite incredible. However, like I said previously, that it is a technology that is here to stay, and we haven't even yet scratched the surface of it. So it's important that, the schools sort of include it in the curriculum in some way, in some form, because if not, then these, I'd say, youngsters will graduate, they'll go out there, and then they're like, wait, I mean, what is this? Yeah. So it's very important. And I, like Joyce said, we really appreciate the work that you are doing, because you're like doing your research, you're doing your part, and you are helping these students. And I hope that most lecturers would do that, and not just be like, I'm just sticking to the old ways and the traditional ways. And so it's really good that you're mixing up all of these things.
Thank you. No, I think my colleagues and other lecturers are also bored of the old syllabus, so also trying to kind of spice it up with some new content, and hopefully that will kind of prepare our students to a short term for now. But I think, having some basics also will help them in a long-term view for the future career. I think that's kind of exciting. And yeah, I'm very excited to see what will happen. I'm always like super excited that, and just the ability for us to switch, I think it's the most exciting thing. I'm working very closely with a coder from IBM, and he was trained from computer science, more Python, but I can see him personally now just doing online courses externally to learn blockchain languages, because obviously the university was not preparing him for that, and it just came so quickly. So so he's kind of like self-training himself to switch, and I think it's just quite impressive. So I think just having kind of an open mind is that something that we're teaching is maybe not exactly something that you will be doing in the future, but just build on that foundation. If once you know the programming language, you can switch to a different one easily, because it's just having like the neurons to jump between languages. I think that helps a lot. And every coder in his life had to go through that process, starting with very old school ones and moving to the new ones. And I think the same will be with us, as you say, like social enterprise. And now we have this creators economy, community managers. Like you can always like use the knowledge that has been taught with a different wording before, but apply it into this the future spaces that will emerge. And yeah, I think I'm very excited to see that.
Thank you so much for taking the time today. I have one last questions before we wrap it up, and that is, what do you want to give, for like something you would want to give advice, or some last words to the students and the young people venturing into Web3 or the tech space?
Oh wow, okay. I didn't really think about that. I think, as a bit linking to what I said before, really be open-minded about the space. I know it's easy to criticize and see outliers and see scam attacks and see things like things like that happen also in a traditional space. So you do have scams in banks as well, and we we do see that on news, but I think really believe in, the potential that Web3 and blockchain has. You're ready to switch to that, so don't kind of shut yourself and really like try to learn more about the space, and of course be cautious. There's a lot of risk out there, but the award increases the higher the risk is, and I think that's something that I always try to encourage people.
Well said. Thank you so much, Mimi. I mean, it felt like we had a lecture today, and you were lecturing us and, giving us so much information. So it was definitely an insightful and informative episode. And we thank you so much for that. And we will be expecting the article that you read. Maybe Joy and I can have another episode going through that article. So Mimi, where can our listeners find you on your social media to follow you and, check out what you're working on?
I think I'm using the same handles everywhere. It's Mimi Nguyen Mimi. And it's because someone took Mimi Nguyen as the Mimi at the end. So I think, quite simple. Wasn't very inventive about that.
I see. And we will also don't worry, we will put everything in the description so the listeners will have access to it. Thank you so much again.
Thank you so much for having me today. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Salimi. Thank you, Mimi, so much for today's episode. And if you guys want to get more involved also in our community, make sure to follow us on our Instagram and our Twitter. We are NewCoin and also NewForum_NCO. And also we have a private Telegram group where we update everyone about what is happening within our community. Thank you so much and stay tuned for the next episode.